Good morning, everyone. December 18th, and welcome to Nadex Morning Analysis, where we take a look at some hot spots in the markets, things you might want to take a look at for some short-term price action today, or something you might want to be looking at going into next week, so set you up for Sunday night. Before we get into the session, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Todd Rich. I'm with Nadex. With me as our guest is Brian Caprice from Keep Trading Simple. Before we actually jump into what's going on in the markets, I need to share that trading involves risk and may not be appropriate for everyone, that any trading decisions you make are solely your responsibility and at your own risk, and that this is an educational session. Please don't construe anything Brian or I say as a buy or sell recommendation. We're doing this for your education purposes. So, Brian, before I flip it over to you, I think really the story for today is going to be the story that we've had all week, which is one, Brexit, a no-deal Brexit. It's down to a few hours. So we're going to talk about the impacts of that. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the U.S. with some stimulus talks. So why don't you kick us off with what's going on with Brexit?
Yeah, it's almost like a story of no news because nothing has really changed in the last 24 hours. They're still coming down to the wire. The deadline given by the EU was on Sunday. That says if we do not get the deal done and signed by Sunday, there's nothing we can do about it. Right now, they're still kind of going back and forth. They're still in kind of, I guess, vigorous negotiations. I don't know if that's still a thing. But both sides keep making comments. You can see that, Barnier is still, the possibility of a Brexit trade, agreement remains 5 hours ago. So the EU seems to be still positive in their message that we can still get a deal done. The other side of the equation, and again, it's always one versus the other one, deal but not expensive sovereignty. They're very, very big on basically maintaining control. And again, fisheries is still kind of the big point. Now, where this gets interesting is really kind of what we're seeing in the markets. I mean, we're seeing really in the currency markets, the only movement we've seen, and let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can get a little bit better review there. There you go, you guys can see that better. You can see really the only thing that's moving here is the pound. I mean, it's, the pound dollar is down 80 pips. And again, this is not really dollar strength because you're seeing the dollar is more or less flat. It's pound weakness. So we have pound weakness because no deal is done. The euro pound is up 60 because, again, pound, no deal is done. And then the pound yen, you can see, is down 50. So, there's been no real news that could drive this. Retail sales number was actually better than expected, but you're not really seeing much come out of it because right now nobody cares about retail sales. Everything is focused on Brexit. In fact, if you click down, you can see some of the, where is it? I had it on the other side when it was smaller. You can see that some of the biggest bits of news are talking about, Christmas is canceled for traders as Brexit goes down to the wire. And it's a very interesting sentiment here. And, this coming out of Bloomberg that says it's not the, what are they saying here? It's not all down tools on Christmas Eve to the 4th of January, unfortunately. We're planning on uncertainty, is going to be, the biggest piece of it, that the normally quiet festive period could turn frantic as traders are being told to have their laptops close at hand to return to the office when news breaks. So, looking at some charts and seeing what we've seen, I mean, the last, 24, 48 hours, we've seen price really start to kind of push back to the downside. And the reason why is because all this positive sentiment really came of, this is the week, everything's positive, we look like we're going to move in the right direction, everything's possible by Friday. And now we're here at Friday and nothing's happened yet. And again, that deadline is fast approaching and we're starting to see price push back down again. So, how this is tradable right now, I mean, there's a few areas. Price is approximately around 140 right now. We had this larger area, which is a 4-hour level up at 140.31. We've talked about it here. It was a good short. It was another short here. It actually spiked up earlier today and then pushed back down again. These are all kind of pound strength type trades. Now, if a Brexit deal gets done, will this 4-hour level hold? The answer is probably not. I mean, we're looking at, maybe an 80 pip move to the top side. This pair should move with Brexit. There are some people saying upwards of 300 pips if it gets done. If it does not get done, the same thing, kind of a move back to the downside. And that brings us back down kind of in here where we were talking before, which is the opposite side of this, the 137.61, which is the gap from last week. Right. Or even potentially at 137.13. So yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah, lots of consolidation, and it's really at this point, I would say the story is how do you prepare for Sunday night, and again, using limited risk is what I would say.
All right, so let's actually take a look here. I'm going to flip these back the other way. Let's jump over to the Nadex platform real quickly. We're looking at the pound yen, and I think this is a good place to start because we're actually, we're watching it roll over, right? A little bit. I mean, it rallied, it's rolled over, but we never did. I mean, we never filled this gap
Mm-mm.
from last week.
No.
So, I mean, who knows if no deal comes through, playing this to the short side. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see it fill that gap.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the upper part of the curve as well. So, the big question is, when will the approval or disapproval come through? Like, what is the actual, if it's not stamped by this time, and will they accept an agreement in principle?
Right.
There's that where that terminology has been thrown out left and right. The EU and China just came up to an agreement in principle on a investment as well. So it's terminology that's used. So if we hear Sunday at noon Eastern time that they've come up with an agreement in principle, will the market take that as a deal is done or not? Because remember, the last agreement in principle did not go through.
Right. So then you always got to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So I think
yeah,
to
exactly.
play this, really, a Nadex knockout's a great way to play this because it's got that defined risk, defined reward. If you thought this were going to roll over, things were going to continue to get soft because it's looking more and more like a no deal Brexit, and this were to drop, you could pick a knockout and go short, and you've got some decent risk reward profile. But if something were to happen and all of a sudden they put something together and the market interprets it good, and this were to go, the pound were to get strong and this were to go to the moon, you know that your risk reward, your risk is limited if you sell an 8x knockout, looking for it to roll over, maybe fill this gap. The other way would be if you actually are banking on something coming through. Like, I really think that they're just playing with fire, but I, in the end, calmer heads will prevail. You
Mm-hmm.
could buy a knockout. All right, you buy this one, and there's not a different way to play it. If it were to completely collapse, your risk is again limited. But if
Mm-hmm.
things were to take off, you can get a nice little bump as the pound gains strength. So I think knockouts would be a one great way to play this. So you'll have to keep an eye on that. Now, these knockouts expire this week. We'll put new ones up on Sunday night. So you'll have to take a look at what's going on Sunday night. So for today, with no news pending, I personally think it's unlikely that they'll come out and say, here's the deal. I think it would probably roll into the weekend. So it's probably more likely to see some weakness in the pound through today if
Yeah.
there is absolutely no news.
Yeah, I would
So,
agree with that as well. Yeah, I think
so,
that's going to be the case.
so that, I mean, that's one way. That's the pound yen.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna jump over. Tell me, what do you, and I'll show it here, and then maybe you could talk about the euro pound. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously that's going to be the one, but let's just take a look at the pound dollar real quickly, just because I see it's right here as well. We're kind of seeing the same thing, aren't we?
Yeah, the pound dollar is rolling over. Yesterday we talked about Brexit and stimulus, and both of those were not necessarily great. Right now, it looks like Brexit is having less of a chance, and the stimulus is having not more of a chance. But we'll talk about that in a second. But all it's really done is pull down, and then in the last 6-8 hours, it's just consolidating in. So it's kind of the same story. It was an extreme high of the curve for me. Again, right now, I would say we'll probably see more positive news today as far as stimulus goes than we would the pound. So yeah, I would say that I'm probably bearish the pound dollar as well today.
Okay. Um, oh, I could have popped that up, and you were seeing the same thing on your chart as well.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, we saw this kind of pullback yesterday. We saw a level, it broke through, it pulled back up again. So things that
It's got
I
that
would be
same gap
concerned.
to fill too, to the downside potentially,
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
in
no,
the
breaker
end.
132. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say this is an area where we're kind of bouncing off of right now. We've seen, basing, we've seen it pull back. We've seen sellers step into this level before. We're talking about maybe a 30 pip run to the downside. It is Friday. So, again, by 11 o'clock, the UK market is done. It's just the US Open. So, really, when I say afternoon, I mean after, 12 o'clock p.m., there's not a whole lot of catalyst that really drives this market. Unfortunately, everybody is kind of waiting to hear Brexit stimulus, Brexit stimulus, Brexit stimulus, and they're hitting the refresh button, waiting for either of those two things. And I just don't feel like either of those is necessarily going to get done today. So we may come down and just lay on this level, and then the question is, it goes back to timing. Is it going to happen before or after the market opens on Sunday night? That's really what we're waiting for.
You wanna just take a quick look at the euro pound. I mean, now that chart's going to look the other way. Is going to look a little different just because the pound.
Euro pound. Yeah, earlier in the week on Tuesday, we talked about price coming down on this one, saying that, hey, listen, it's been negative. We got nothing. Come down and grab this area 89.50 and then kind of roll back up again is really what we were looking for with positive news. It didn't go that much farther down. It ended up stabilizing itself. It's still pushed back up again, but right now you can see that it is really sitting. And again, for those of you that are not used to looking at my charts, this gray area, and I'll try to make it as big as possible and try to make it a little bit more clear. This area here is kind of the no man's land. It's in the middle, and you can see that we've really kind of come back to this level and stabilized. Now, for me right now, looking at this on kind of a larger scale, I still think, again, a move, this is about 150 pips higher, 91.94-ish is a pretty decent level. And again, this 89.50 level to the downside. So, I don't think we're going to get movement top or bottom. Something would have to really, really happen. But small things, like if we pushed up into, and again, this is a gap area that we talked about last week, but for some reason, if we're able to kind of start retracing back up, this is only about 50 pips away. If there's negative or positive news and we open in this area, that may give us a limited risk entry to the downside. But right now, being in the middle, it's consolidating. I don't think that traders have any idea what's going to happen right now, according to the euro pound. And actually, again, I'm not here to plug things, but if you guys go over to Daily FX, one of the tools that I do use occasionally is seeing what this sentiment is. I don't know if you guys can see this. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Hopefully you guys can see it. You guys see this euro pound? Right now, nobody has any idea. 51% of clients are net long. Normally, when you see this really kind of tear towards 70% in one direction, it goes the exact opposite. Right now, everybody is torn as well. So traders are at an impasse right now. They have no idea what's going to happen right now. And again, it's kind of at this point, it's like rolling dice going into the weekend.
So I just thought, at least just to show this over on the Nadex platform. Now I'm looking at call spreads because there's some call spreads that could be interesting. If we think we're going to see the euro continue to strengthen against the pound, and I'm not really sure it's really the euro strengthening, more the pound weakening.
Pound weakening, yeah, it's the pound.
That's the story. There is a call spread in here today if you wanted to play around with it, where again, limited risk, limited reward. If this thing were to the pound were to weaken some more, there might be some upside in here, as you were pointing out. But again, with no news, who knows what's going to go on? Everyone's really kind of curious what's going to happen here. And with no news, maybe it'll just trend sideways. But something to look at that you might not traditionally look at. But I do kind of like the limited risk, limited reward directional plays that you can use with call spreads and knockouts. Of course, there's always the binary options, very small contracts, and again, limited risk, limited reward way, play them over in the binary options. But that's kind of what's setting up for today in regards to Brexit or with a deal or not. Certainly some great ideas to consider and look at going into Sunday evening, which is something else we'd like to try to do on Fridays, is give you something to stew on or to think about over the weekend as the markets open up again on Sunday. The other thing, we mentioned stimulus a little bit. I know the U.S. equity markets are all pretty flat. I think we're seeing a little bit of a rally in oil and gold. I don't know if you want to quickly just kind of do something.
Yeah, I mean, everything's pushing slightly higher. Doesn't matter what we're looking at, whether it be NQ pushing up slightly. Again, you guys can see it driving a little bit forward here. S&P, same thing, kind of making new attempts higher. You can see the Dow. Again, Dow's a little bit more flat right now, but again, didn't have the same pullback that the other indices had. So where we are with stimulus right now, everybody thought it was going to get done today. Right now, it has been pushed into the weekend. Economists, everybody's still hopeful that it's going to get done. There was a question brought up at the last minute before anything was signed, basically about putting some restrictions on the Fed as far as who they can loan to and how long and things. And it's a very interesting discussion brought up about it. And it's, again, it is a Republican versus Democrat kind of disagreement there. But I do think it does have some merit in what the Fed's actual job is. Now, they said they were going to work into the weekend late if they have to. They're not going anywhere until this is done. I still do think it is going to get finished. Maybe there'll be some additional provisions on there. I don't think it's as much as originally planned for. But again, I still think it'll be a big perk. If people can get some more money, that will drive sales and that will help. Is it the end all be all? No, I think there'll be another one in January as well at this point. But remember, also today we expect to hear news that the FDA has approved Moderna, which is also again another positive thing for the overall market.
Indeed, awesome.
So.
No, thank you for that. There we go. And with that, I just want to remind everyone, if you would like to reach out to Nadex, please email us, customerservice@nadex.com. Follow us on our social media. You're on our YouTube channel. I'm going to mention that we did a day-long day trading boot camp session yesterday. Had a lot of folks with us. If you missed it, those recordings will be up soon on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to catch them. If you got any questions for Brian, you can catch him at support@keeptradingsimple.com. He is accessible. You can email him. And with that, I think that covers it for today. Thank you for joining us. We gave you some ideas to look at over the weekend, and we will catch you Monday morning. Everyone stay safe out there. Enjoy your weekend, and good luck in the markets.